Good evening. Welcome to our special meeting of council for December 15th. This is third meeting where we are deliberating our budget 2026. To open the meeting this evening, I'd like to invite Councillor Rivard to read our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we meet today, I would like to take a moment to recognize the components of the land on which we are gathered. The municipality of West Nipissing respectfully acknowledges that we are located on the homelands of the Anishinaabe peoples, on the traditional territory of the Nipissing, Temagami, and Doki's First Nations, covered by the Robinson-Huron Treaty. We honor and recognize their historical connection to the land and value their significant contributions in shaping and strengthening our communities. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility towards reconciliation and improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rivard. Number 2, declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry. What is it?
Fire.
Yeah, thank you. Fire and emergency service. Great.
And I understand you have filed the appropriate paperwork with the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to the adopt the agenda. Madam Clerk. Who wants a resolution after this?
There were only 3. Okay, it's moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Larrabee. Be it resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of council held on December 15th, 2025 be adopted as presented.
Okay, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to number 4, the only item on the agenda for this evening, deliberation of the 2026 staff budget. For an introduction to this evening filled with fun, I will pass the floor to our CAO, Mr. Pilon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. I just want to open up by saying staff has been working diligently behind the scenes over the last period of time since our last meeting, really sort of fleshing out some of the concerns and discussion that was had at the table here during our last meeting. And we'll be bringing forward some suggestions and obviously some potential revisions with regards to what was our opening balance and what we've collectively come up with as recommendations back to council based on your feedback and for further discussion. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Craddock and we'll get a good wholesome update on what's happening.
Thank you. So you do just a little summary in front of you. As Mr. Pilon said, we just sort of captured some of those items that were discussed over our budget. And so you can see sort of the collective impact of them. So the one that was sort of came up at the end of our discussion last budget meeting was the continued reduction of the reliance on that transfer from general reserve into operating to fund operating. And so in our starting point, I left it at sort of that we had $1 million in 2025. I left it as $1 million transfer. So the 200,000 represents that reduction down to an $800,000 transfer from general reserve to operating as sort of that tax stabilization. So that continued reduction in the reliance on the general reserve into our operating. This year, they said, it is a reasonable year to do it. We did sort of get that bonus of the OMPF increasing so substantially. So it does allow you to do that. A few of the other things that I then have put in here. So doctor recruitment, there had been an ask for $125,000. Again, it had been discussed a little bit last meeting without sort of setting an actual number to it. So I've suggested, if we take that from 125 down to 75,000, it's a reduction of expense of $50,000. The library board as well had a substantial ask this year. There have been some general discussions at the last meeting, sort of a 4% over their 2025 actual. It results in a reduction of $86,000 from what was originally presented, but that gives them a 4% increase over what was their 2025 number was. I do want to thank those councillors that sit on our various boards that did a little bit of pushing and digging. So we did get some replies. So the Eau Chateau again, just sort of gave us a broad range of where they think their budget's going. Obviously, their budget's not completed now. It is just an estimate. I had used a 5% estimate. I've reduced it to a 4% estimate based on the communication that we've had. So it's just a little bit of a change on the chateau there. Insurance was the big one, and we sort of gave council a heads up as we came into the budget discussion that we had just learned that day that there was going to be substantial savings on our insurance levy in 2026. It does not all apply to this budget. There is some savings that is realized in water and sewer budget and in the solid waste budget. So the savings that impact this budget are 446,900. It is a substantial savings. I'm going to skip the next line and go to DSAP for a moment. So unlike Chateau, DSAP gave us a heads up that they have a starting point of over 6% at this point. Again, it is just a starting point. They are just started their budget process. There may be some reductions that come out of that discussion as DSAP works through theirs. As we are aware, when DSAP says that the municipal levy goes up by 6%, West Nipissing's levy always goes up more than that because our assessment is growing faster relative to the partner groups. So for estimating purposes, I've moved our DSAP estimate to 6.75. So it is a fairly large increase. So that is then putting expense back into our budget. It is increasing that window. But when we did all of that sort of shuffling around, and again, the big savings coming from the insurance piece, and we were starting with a significant increase, and there had been some discussion at council last time, get it under 3%. We'd like to be under 3%. That, because this year you sort of have that windfall of both the OMPF and the change of insurance, that taking that money and putting it into a dedicated reserve sort of helps build those reserves without sort of have a sort of the same consequence to the taxpayers. Now, usually when we put money into dedicated reserve, we try to build it so we've got a year-over-year increase. This one wouldn't be. This would kind of be like a one-time boost to potentially, and I've sort of suggested in conversation with the mayor, Mr. Pilon, that the suggestion be that it goes into community services facility, simply because that is so far behind in relation to the facility and the work that we need to have done. And so that, is just, if we've got this little bit of a windfall this year, that putting it into dedicated reserve is a place to sort of keep that while still keeping a reasonable tax levy increase. We did get our notification on the OPP allocation, and the OPP allocation, we were capped at the 11% allocation, and it's actually a little bit less than what is in our budget at this point. But for the same reason that we did last year, I'm not suggesting that we go and actually reduce that. I'm suggesting that we keep the budget that's in here right now. So what they're doing now with this capping and reconciling and all the rest is that it's just shifting the liability over a longer period, right? So the increase in OPP contract from 2025 original to 2026 was about $336,000. We've got 320 in our budget this year. So it kind of keeps us caught up, because we're going to continue to get these reconciliations with this 11% capping until they've kind of caught back up from the big decrease they gave to everybody in 2025. So though there's a little bit of difference between our budget for OPP and what we've got for our costing statement, I'm suggesting that we not leave that one. We leave that in there as a stable level of the budget for that one. That was all the changes with operating that I had sort of captured from your discussions. And then on the capital plan, when we were looking at the number of capital, again, just as we came to council, we gave you the updated infrastructure capital because there were going to be savings on the granular resurfacing on East Road and Stewart Road. That does free up room, to move that council priority of the brushing and ditching from Avenue du Lac into the current year. So that's the 193 to do Avenue du Lac in the current year, and there's still budget within the infrastructure capital in order to accomplish that. I know within the community services and facilities, there were some bits circulating regarding maybe what we might do with the land reserve outside. I know Mr. Poulin has got a lot of stuff that you would have seen over the weekend that's at the council meeting tomorrow, sort of ties to that. So the only capital change that I've captured right now is the moving Avenue du Lac onto the 2026 capital plan. Madam Mayor, I think that's the changes.
Okay, that's great. There was one other piece that we had discussed. We can do it now or later, but the one other piece that I discussed with Madam and Mr. Stone when I met with him earlier this week was that on those dedicated reserves and how there were a couple of kind of random unused, and I think we had identified, do you have that on that one?
Yep. Yep.
So that,
So if you're looking at your operating budget package, it's gonna be at the very end of your operating budget. If I may, Madam
and
Mayor,
51.
152. So we didn't really do go over the dedicated reserve with any great detail as we were going through the budget process. And these are amounts that are set aside as part of a budget process for capital expenditures. And if they're not spent in that year, they do just carry forward. And you will see amounts building up in some of the reserves because that is actually the goal of reserves. We're not doing a complete pay as you go. So, you know, community services might put money in for several years because they know they've got a really big project coming down the road. If we take them down to zero every year, then we sort of lose that ability to plan. So the goal of the dedicated reserves is that we're able to tie our, you know, 5-year asset management, our longer term asset management, our sort of replacement schedules with a smoothing effect to the taxpayer. So we're not doing up and down, depending on the large projects that need to happen. And yes, there are some dedicated reserves here that the mayor did speak with me about. Some of them look sort of easy. So, you know, the one I'm going to look at the museum reserve there. So it was one that was set up back when the museum stood a little bit more independently. As community services has taken care of more and more of our facilities, they are just running it out of the facilities budget. So it makes sense to transfer that amount, and these would be by resolution later. Makes sense to transfer that amount to the community services facility reserve because community services is taking care of things. The same with the emergency measures. At some point long ago in a galaxy far, far away and all the rest, we were transferring money into emergency measures for the purpose of upgrading our facilities and adding generators and such like that for emergency evacuation centers. Again, with the consolidation of everything under community services and their facilities, you know, if we're planning that work, we're going to do it under the community services. So again, that one would get closed into the community services facility one. We did speak really briefly, I think, during our budget about that Evansville playground reserve that was set up and it has been carrying for some time. And again, if there's an appetite to sort of collapse that into community services equipment, which takes care of all of our playgrounds, including, you know, we're not going to get a playground for that 5,500, but if there is to be a playground out there later, that it would, you know, that it can be in the community services equipment. And then we've got, if you look on the very last page, there's a couple there. So the police transition reserve is actually exactly that. It's sort of what remained from reserves we had, sale of equipment, purchase of new equipment, and there's a transition. So in the sale of equipment as we did the transition to OPP, we were left with this this reserve that is there. And I would suggest that if we're going to look at if council's going to look at reallocating this reserve, that it actually get, because it was an equipment reserve, that it get moved to a fleet or equipment reserve, because that's what went into forming that reserve. The police services contingency reserve is actually a police board reserve that we can talk to the board about whether they have plans for it. It came out of, again, back when we had West Nipissing Police Service, when they would do the sale of recovered things, like if they'd recovered stolen bikes and things like that nobody claimed, it would go into there. And the police board used to use that and sometimes donate to various, you know, like the Santa Fund and other charities and other events that went on. So we could have a discussion with the board about their little bit of contingency reserve there. So that would just sort of move some of these reserves that are a little bit more static or haven't been used into reserves where they might sort of liberate the funds to be used for projects that are ongoing. But, you know, those are ones you know, if council agreed, we would do as a resolution separate from budget. We would do a resolution to sort of close reserves and transfer funds to other dedicated reserves.
Well, I'll start with that piece, because if they are gonna come back as resolution, you know, we'll want to make sure we're all on the same page. So with what, Ms. Craddock just went over, are there questions and comments specifically on the dedicated reserves, and then we'll work backwards. President? Councilor Pennary.
There is the fire services, the 2 million and the balance. I know there's a few vehicles on one order, is that?
Yes, that's, yep.
So that will cover for, what are we waiting for including this year?
There's 3 that are that are already approved and sort of in procurement. And then there is a 4th one that was requested in this year. But again, it's that, you know, even if we were moving the fleet out, it's that building for the fact that we know right now there's 16 apparatus, I think was the calendar filling that. So it is, yeah. So we wouldn't necessarily bring it down to 0 after the 3 purchases this year. But yes, that's why it's so high, is because there's 3 purchases that were approved in prior years that have not gone through all the way through the procurement cycle yet.
So it just sits there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And, oh, okay, you want to wait for,
Yeah, it just on the dedicated,
Okay.
and we'll go backwards.
Okay.
Councilor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The police transition
Mhm.
for the equipment, that would go toward, would it be toward the emergency measures of the fire department? Or public works, or wherever it's needed?
Really, where, you know, I'd like to see it stay with fleet or equipment. You know, emergency services might be a reasonable connection, but it could be public works fleet. It could be fleet. I think because it came out of fleet and equipment, it'd be appropriate to keep it with fleet and equipment. But really, when council's looking at, hey, I want to liberate funds or close this dedicated reserve, you can put it into, you know, whatever you're choosing.
Thank you.
Councilor Lavar.
And can you take like 25,000 in one, 50 in another, okay? Because I see the bylaw vehicle fleet
Yep.
is pretty low as well, and if we plan to keep adding staff, that might be something we could.
Okay, so that will come back at a future meeting, just to deal with all those dedicated. It doesn't impact budget because it's just shifting monies from one holding place to another. Okay, and then we had a very good update from Ms. Craddock there. I guess my first question, before we start going through individually, is everything that was discussed captured? Councilor Gosselin?
sorry, my mayor. I have a question for dedicated.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
What did you say parts and planning was for?
Oh, that is when we've taken an agreement. So when they do subdivision agreements, we can get money for parks or we can get land for parks, and this is so it does have to stay. It can be used, but it does have to stay as its own reserve.
We can use it for.
Parks and playgrounds and, yep.
Okay, so that would be community services budget too.
They generally take care of all the playground stuff, yes.
Good. Good, thank you.
But the answer is like, it does, because it's a specific piece that goes along with our subdivision agreements, that one has to stay as it's. But council does have the ability to use the money from that reserve for appropriate expenditure.
But my question is, it's a capital budget, but it's under community services, all our parks.
Yes.
Because there's also maintenance and inspections every year, and can some of the money be taken from this if needed?
I'm not sure about operating. I'd have to check that. Yeah, I'm not sure about operating.
Look into it. I think
It
it's
probably
more-
really should be capital.
Yeah.
it's more for capital.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the dedicated reserves? Councillor Fedor.
You know, right? Maybe, I think we talked about this before, but I forget. The land sales that we have
Yeah.
goes into a reserve.
Mhm.
Does it show here?
Yeah, that's the one, the third one down, that's land disposition.
Okay. And did we ever, or do we ever, will we get back the, definition of a book value?
Gonna pretend you didn't ask that question. We're not gonna talk about book values.
No, but is it gonna come back one day? Because it was clear that nobody understood about it that way.
We can plan to have the next discussion when we have the next discussion about a disposition, land disposition, maybe
Yep.
be ready to try to explain where the money is.
Mhm.
Cause, okay,
We can provide information ahead of time.
Yeah.
Give you a little education package if you like.
Councillor Rivard.
I do too. I know it's off topic, but at this point, I also just really like when they tell us the book value and that we make money on it. So I don't have to fully understand.
I want to understand.
No, it's tough though. See if we get it.
Okay, so revision, actually, where shall I start? Doctor recruitment, the initial ask, on the budget was $125,000. There was some concern that that was a bit of a jump. I think when we started, I was trying to look back to, 2023, it is 20 or 25,000. Or 24, so 2024 and 2023 previously, it's 20 or 25,000. Last year we increased to 50,000. And I just want to get a feeling where, the request came in at 125. Are we happy at 75? I'd just like to see if anybody has feedback on the physician recruitment piece, like Councilor Fallon.
I don't know how doctors and their health and the hospital is the most important thing that we have. If we don't have this, and it's a mess right now, and I think it's gonna get worse. I don't know. To me, it's something that we should not cut on. That's my opinion.
Councilor St. Louis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I was one of them that spoke about it the last. I would like to reiterate that it's not so much that we're gonna go down the 50,000. Like when I stated is, as long as the understanding is there with the hospital that if they are able to acquire doctors and they need additional funds or additional assistance from the municipality to come to us, and then we can go maybe in some of the reserves or something to assist, but to set our budget, I'm okay with the 75 personally. But as long as the committee at the hospital understands that we're not closing the door on them, we're here for them and we're willing to assist when the time comes, provide further assistance.
I just want to be clear that I think the 75 that's proposed in the budget that's come back to us, $25,000 would be a contribution directly to the Physicians Recruitment Committee to help to fund their recruitment activities. And then the 50,000 would be similar to what we had this year, where it is set aside for specific asks for actually recruitment or to assist with return of service agreements, etc. So that's the proposal that is in front of us now is $25,000 directly to fund the committee, and $50,000 as a fund that can be used on an ad hoc basis. Councillor Resto?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that was my understanding as well in terms of what the ask was. Not necessarily that we were that the hospital would come back or the doctor recruitment team would come back if there was a candidate who was identified and if they were in negotiations to try and bring another physician to the community. And if there wasn't during the year, then the funds wouldn't be accessed for that 100,000 part. I think for myself, it's important to identify support for this initiative within our community, especially if it's only, we're committing, call it a placeholder within the budget for potential use of funds, not necessarily that they will be used, but that if we get to that, if they get to that stage and they know that these funds are here, I think it's very helpful in terms of negotiation with a potential physician who comes, rather than having them come back to the table again at some point during the year to say, okay, you've done 50, now we want to ask for another 50 for the original 100 that we had proposed. Because we know figures and we know that that's a number that's requested of municipality if the action happens during the fiscal year. So for myself, I don't want to put the onus back on them to come back again mid-year or 3/4 way through the year to say, thanks for approving this, but we need this. And if we're already of the mindset that we are going to assist them, then for myself, I don't know why we just don't commit what the request is to have it there. They have peace of mind knowing that if they need to move ahead, we support them to that degree. And then the other, I guess, question I had for staff is, and I raised this with one of our other items in the budget talks, was if we get further into the year and we get to that lame duck status, does that prevent us from committing additional funds outside of the budget at a level of what could be $50,000 in the next fiscal year? So kind of handcuffing ourselves that if they come back in September or late August and say, hey, we have a candidates here, can you guys reconsider the extra 50,000? We might have to say, sorry, we're lame duck, we can't do anything. I'm not sure if that amount works for that.
Madam Clerk.
Madam Chair, through our delegated authorities bylaw, our CAO has the authority during the lame duck period to authorize expenditures over that amount.
Okay. That's helpful for that question, but just sharing my thought, I think we're all, I don't want to say all, if some of us around the table are of the mindset that we are supportive and that we're open to going above the 50. I don't see why we don't just approve it now at budget time and have it sitting there, like I said, in case it's needed. And if it's not, then it's not.
Okay, Councillor Fedor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councillor Stu. I think maybe not the whole 125, but it has to be close. I think the money has to be there, because where are we going to get it if we do have the opportunity to incentivize doctors? If we're asked to, where is it going to come from? A lie. And we still have, I think we only spent 30,000 this year out of 20 we spent out of the 50. We have 30 left over.
Doesn't work.
Well, I know, but it's there somewhere.
Well, it went
like
back,
a book
it went
value.
back
It's there.
into the general reserve.
I know, but it's there.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But what we're seeing right now is that we use 20, there's still 30 left. If we were to dedicate 50, chances are that would also be gone. That would be gone. So I like the idea that we dedicate 25,000 and then we put aside and council decides when the ask comes to us forward. I'm seeing the groups are working together. A hospital with Youth Auto, with the health center, and going to bring in the family health team. So all of them will be working together. So that would, if the money is needed, then we have that ability. We give them 25 like usual to do their recruitment and retention, and we help them whenever the ask is there. I don't think the lame duck, like our clerk explained, that we'll still be able to move forward with an ask, and like right now, we took 20 out of it, we still got 30 and it's still here. The other way, maybe it would probably be gone. So I would rather we keep it here and we deal with it as comes toward us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Weber.
Thank you. Right through you. Yeah, but I believe the idea is they will still ask. The idea is we need to make sure that the money is, so when they ask, we actually have some money to give. So that's the idea is, like, I'm totally in favor of there. Like, we should budget for this amount. Like, I understand. And then what scares me though is about that whole 30,000. So then if it goes into general reserve, so next year we need to put another 100 type of deal. And then like, so that's what I don't understand. Like, isn't that 30,000 still there? Right? Cause then you were saying it's like, that's.
Yeah,
the
no,
one.
I believe that any surplus and that falls under operating budget. It's not a capital expense. So any surpluses within the operating budget roll back into the general reserve at the end of the year, correct?
That is correct. Now, if council says that they want to start, we just talked about dedicated reserve. If council wants to start building a dedicated reserve and we've got unspent money, the same as the resolution that's coming to council about unspent projects. If council wants to say, I would like to transfer all the unspent money from the doctor recruitment at the end of this year into a dedicated reserve, and then it just gives you a little bit bigger buffer, that is something that council can consider.
Councilor.
Thank you through. So yeah, that's what I was kind of looking at because I noticed ECDev, it falls under ECDev on an operating budget. And then, so why can't we do that where the ECDev reserve, the money from the doctor recruitment goes in there and then at least it's there every year to go. I'm in favor of, we find the money now to make sure that it's there. And maybe that's something where the land disposition, if we don't want the 2.85 to go up, what's taking an extra 50,000 from there to make sure that you have your 125 certain ready to go if we get the asset comes in, right? Is that an option that we can do? Look at our reserves right now, which are sitting, some of them are fairly healthy, and then we just ensure that we have that amount this year. If the concern is to go, to raise this tax rate from 2.85 to higher or above.
Okay. Councillor Fede.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Then if we can create a reserve just for that, back to what I just suggested a couple of minutes ago. There's 30,000 left over. Let's put that in a doctor recruitment reserve, and it's there. And the other 45 we take it out of the operational budget. So we'll have 25 plus 100. We can go and get up to 100 more during the year.
All right. I'm just a little confused as to how we would need $100,000 in a single year. Because we just had a request to sign a family physician and it was a $20,000 ask. And if you're looking at multi-year return of service agreements, I'm pretty sure, and somebody may know better than I do, that they are paid out on an annual basis. And so for me, the idea of creating a reserve where we're actually collecting money for a specific specific reason where we're likely not ever going to have a request to spend that amount of money in a single year. I don't know that it makes sense. So if there's $50,000 there, I don't know that we're gonna get 2 or 3 requests in a single year. For doctors to come to this community, and these are taxpayer dollars, so we're holding them aside for something that, again, to create a reserve where we're actually growing that amount. I don't know that it makes sense. It's supposed to be I shouldn't say a bonusing. But the money is supposed to be for return of service agreements. It's a one-time contractual payment or annualized payment for a multi-year contract. So I just don't. Maybe I'm thinking wrong about that, but that's kind of the way I feel about it. Counselor, go back
If
to
I can
Mr.
just
Spoon.
follow up on my last point. It's a competitive environment. We know this. And maybe we stand a better chance by waiving a check for $40,000 than a check for $20,000. So
Counselor St. Louis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I understand everything that being said, and I agree with what you're saying, that maybe we can pull somebody in with 40,000 or 30,000 as opposed to 20,000. But again, we had 50,000 last year and we only used 20,000 of it. So this year we're looking at giving them 125, but we might only spend 20. And then that 105 that's left will go back in a reserve. My concern is what Madam Mayor is saying is we are talking about taxing our residents for something that we might need. Maybe it's going to help them. I hope it does help them. But my point is if we go with what staff presented us with the 75,000, we're giving them 25 and we're actually upping an additional 25 to 50,000. And if it's needed, I believe somebody mentioned that it kind of falls under ECDev. Well, ECDev here has
125.
81,000 left. I'm not saying to use it by no means, or like Councillor Rivera said, there's so much reserves in there that if needed, then we can go and deal with it at that time. But I don't agree with taxing our residents right now just to put money in case we have a second or third doctor that come up to us, right? And right now, it's 20,000, the number that's showing up to have doctors come here. If it goes up to like 30, like Conseiller Ferrand says, then we'll find the money. We're talking about our residents and providing them great services, but we're also talking about our residents and making them pay taxes for stuff that we might not use.
Thank you. Counselor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 25,000 is for the administration to go out and to colleges, try to in our area. The 20,000 that we use was to, once that contract was signed, to bring them over here. So like the 25,000 should be enough for them to go out like usual to attract doctors. And if, let's say we've got 3 doctors that wants to come at one time or 4, we always have the reserve. So why take 125 or and lock it? And it's our resident that are paying for it. If we get a good call on the doctors, like this year, we got 2 coming in. And so we're just tying up money like for the taxpayers. I say, let's put 25 like we usually do. And then if they need money, they come here, they come over, we make the decision and then move on with that. Thank you.
Counselor Pellerin.
I'm thinking, okay, let's say there's a couple doctors that, okay, we need some money. How quick could that be, that decision? How quick can we respond to them? I'd rather that the money be there. And it's gonna be there. If we don't use it, it's gonna be there next year. But these days, it's gonna be really, really competitive. Hopefully, we get some people from Quebec. I don't know. The other thing, the 25,000 for recruitment, do we give that? Does we use that every year?
I don't believe we did
If-
that last year.
Okay.
The request came for 125 last year. And I think that there was some flux in the recruitment committee at that time, and we chose last year just to hold the $50,000 and to distribute it upon request. And we only received the 1 request. So In the past, though, it had been, I believe, 20,000 plus 5,000 in kind.
Mhm.
Was what had been done all the way up to last year was the first time that it was more than that. So we went from 25 to 50 last year. Now the request is to go from 50 to 125. And it's been drawn back where it's being proposed that we approve at 75, which is the 25
Yes.
for recruitment activities plus a $50,000 recruitment fund.
I was just wondering, like the recruitment, like activities, like they've got budget to go out and,
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Do we pay in that operation when they go out to me, the money we're putting in as signing bonus? Because you've got the hospital, you've got the Ostrato, you've got the health team, and you got the something. So I'm sure they got enough to cover. I'm sure they got grants or whatever to go ahead and find them. I don't know. I think to me, we should just be here to have enough money for a signing bonus. That's my thought.
So your thought is that we shouldn't be funding the operations of the recruitment committee. We should just have the funds set aside. And would you do 50 or 75 on that?
I would do what we originally thought, as much as we can. If we get to ask and we got the money, and if there's a bidding, you know, if they come back, oh, okay, somebody in Sudbury is offering so much and we got the money.
Okay.
It's not going anywhere.
Councilor Nicol?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we need to remember that the committee is a lot more established and active than they were a couple of years ago. They're out in the community, they're at a lot of recruitment events. And what was the number of positions they needed? Does anybody remember? 6, 8, ideally? There's a bunch of retirements coming up, so I think having some money set aside is a good idea. Because you never know, there might be 3 next year, ideally.
Hopefully.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Gagne because he hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
I have a suggestion to make, and maybe your financial specialist can maybe help my suggestion. If we have $30,000 left over this year that we can move to doctor recruitment capital project, and maybe take 70 from the police transition, that would give us $100,000 of a signing bonus or recruitment, and leave our current $25,000 as is. We technically have that 125, and if we don't spend it all this year, well, it's going to be there in our capital investment for future years if we don't use it all, and we can maybe build that fund. And it's actually not increasing the tax burden on taxpayers currently. I would still love to see the past 4 years of data so that we know actually what have they done in the past 4 years, where the $25,000 commitment that they've been receiving from us. And I know it's something you're looking at, Mr. Pinot, but.
So if I may, Madam Mayor, so I did have a further discussion with Ms. Morissette over at the hospital. And their recruitment activities really only have begun, I will say, in 2025, parts of 2024 and 25. They really haven't been engaged in some, I will say, structured recruitment. I'm going to say she mentioned basically the last 3 to 5 years from COVID on, they really have not been active at the table. Or she's new in the role. There was a lot of transition with the CEO, the previous few CEOs, and it was a little bit discombobulated. They restood up the committee, obviously, the recruitment committee. They have a little working group that basically manages the recruitment efforts, and their budget, as per obviously their presentation to council a few weeks ago, is very much delineated to all of their costs. Including their retention service agreements with, or the return to service agreements with current physicians. Obviously, she's delineated that the need is going to be 6 emergency department physicians and 2 hospitalists over the next foreseeable future. So out of their budget, they're spending about 25. Last year, they spent about $30,000 on direct recruitment activities, going to recruitment fairs, visiting, paying their fees for the various memberships, for recruitment activities, you know, some materials like banners and social media posts, a little bit of, you know, schmoozing of a potential doctor and family. And what they're asking this year, I know last year, my information is we didn't fund that activity at all. The $50,000 was still there and I think remained in coffers based on an ad hoc or an as needed basis. What they're asking for this year, and Councillor Larrabee has hit the nail on the head, they're asking for $25,000 from council as a whole for directly to contribute directly to their recruitment activities. The other $100,000 is basically on I will say an ad hoc basis, much as what occurred this year. So that's essentially what the ask is. So the 25 would be in direct contribution. It's not a supplemental piece. I clarified that with Madam Morissette. And when I asked for statistics, basically her rebuttal to that is it's a bit of a long game with recruitment because they're basically, you know, approaching fourth year students or first year or second year residents. And they're basically having those conversations sort of year over year, month over month with regards to where they're at, if they're still interested in coming to the community. And that's essentially the recruitment activities that they've been engaged in, I will say, in the last 18 months. So for us to produce some statistics or them to produce some statistics, she said would be a bit of a challenge because it's really difficult to quantify how successful you're being. But she did state they were doing basically nothing and now they are actively engaged and they're there at the table along with all of the other hospitals, along with all of the other sort of recruitment committees across the province. And that's essentially, you know, her stance on that piece. And she was looking for that type of support. And certainly she made it very clear, we are prepared to account for every penny, every dollar with respect to those recruitment activities back to council, mayor and council as needed. So that's essentially the information that I gleaned from her on that piece. And it's basically recruitment as a whole, I will say. They're looking to recruit family physicians. You know, there's those three streams of basically a family or a physician basically having a family practice, a physician also practicing in the ER, and a physician also seeing their patients while they're in hospital and doing rounds. Sort of that blended sort of compensation agreement still exists with doctors. And she's trying overall to just, if she can get a physician to just come in and be a family doctor, they're okay with that. If they want to do more, then obviously that's a bonus. It helps with their needs. That's essentially what the information she provided to me in rebuttal to your request, Mr. Counselor, during the last meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
I don't know if there are any questions on that.
Thank you. Councillor Koenig.
Just, so would that be an option to put like the remaining money that we put aside for doctor recruitment this year, plus maybe taking some from the police transition and having a capital budget of $100,000, which would actually meet the request from the hospital? Is that an option?
Absolutely. So you can take the unspent money from this year and put it in reserve. And as we've discussed, you know, when you're reallocating the dedicated reserve, you want to take part of the transition reserve and put it into there. So let's say you're starting with $100,000 sitting in this reserve because you've got 30 and you've moved over and you want to hold the current line on the budget for just the recruitment activities in a little bit. So you've got it there. They come and say, hey, we need 2 or 3 allocations this year. It solves your problem this year. It doesn't solve your problem if you've got a year over year ask for it. But absolutely, you know, council can do that. And if you want to sort of streamline this year and just keep this for if they come for extra amounts, you know, yeah.
Councillor Feder.
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree. I think excellent idea. I think we need to have whether it's in our budget or we have it as a reserve, we need 100,000 to be able to recruit 3 or 4 doctors because they're ramping up their activity and we have a lot retiring. We'll need to make a bigger effort. So the money has to be there. And if in 2026, we spend the whole 100, then we'll know that in 2027, we'll take it out of operational, put another 100 in, and but the money needs to be there. I don't want us to be in July or August and wondering where we're gonna take it from. And have to debate that. I think we need to make sure the money is there and it doesn't even require a council meeting if there's a doctor that's, and if we can recruit a doctor to. I agree with your idea, Councillor Gardner.
Councillor Estel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I love the idea. I propose a little twist to it, and my twist is kind of where I came from before, regarding the, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess leaning on reserves too much, and then having a void next year. I think I'd propose kind of a little bit of hybrid in there. If we have 30,000 that we can dedicate from this current year, if we can take 20,000 from that dedicated reserve is 50, and then go with what's being posed here, which essentially is 75,000 for the current year or the next year. See myself up here. 30,000 from this year dedicated, 20,000 from the police transition reserve, but keep 50,000 in this coming year's budget so that we have a base to start from. And then when we get to 2027, if we do need, then we're not going from 0 up to 100. We're already at that 50,000 mark. And if we don't need it, then we don't. But I say that because, like I mentioned before, if we rely too much on reserves, then we're always going to rely on reserves. If we can kind of blend that a bit and have some to get us going, some reserves, some from what wasn't spent this year, but in increasing a little bit next year, so we have that base amount to start from for next year, and then, as Councillor Fedai mentioned, reassess in 2026 where we're at, and if we do need to increase, we're not going from 0 to 100. We're already at 50, and it makes it a little bit easier on the budget.
So I'm hearing, I think, that council would like to go with the $125,000 request, $25,000 for the committee and $100,000 set aside. The 30,000, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other at this point, because it's already gone back in general reserve. So, it's still.
Hasn't yet.
No, but according to our budget documents, it's slated to go back in. But so I just want to get an idea on the funding level. Is it 125? Councillor St. Louis?
So, through Madam Mayor, no. That's not how I'm seeing it, how you proposed it, the 125 at all. Because if we do the 125, then that 75,000, that 2.85, then we're taxing the individuals again. I totally agree with what Conseiller Gagné said, and in a roundabout way, it's kind of what I was suggesting earlier, that we have the 75,000 and we get the rest from whatever reserves when needed to. I think what Councillor Restol is kind of in a roundabout way saying also, let's go with the 75,000, take the 30 that we had left over here and pick another 20 or 15 from that police transition. So that way everything remains at 2.85 and we get to the 100,000 or 125. I think that's how I read it.
Councillor Resto.
I agree 100%. The only point that I put on top of that is that with these changes, that we identify that those funds are going into dedicated reserve for physician or health professional recruitment, whatever we title it, so that when, and I'm fingers crossed, so we have to access it, it's there. And it's not a decision of where we get it from or do we do it. It's there. We can use it for that purpose, and it serves both, right? We have the 125. We're going with what's proposed here, but we're taking that other 50 from other sources. We're putting it into that line item so that if we do need to access it, we're not picking or deciding whatnot. We've already committed around the table now to have those funds available if we need to access them.
Okay, who's in favor of what Jamie said? And I'll let Elisa figure out exactly what that is.
If I may- if I may
Oh,
ask-
sorry.
If I may ask you this one question.
Okay.
Do we keep the funds here? We give 25, we keep the remaining here? And they ask,
Yes.
okay.
Well, in my opinion, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what was
Because
proposed.
it can't be just the hospital either. It has to be available
Yes.
to any of the organizations that are in healthcare. And, you know, there's also, you know, a spend like that needs, in my opinion, needs to be vetted by council. It should be up to the discretion of another organization on whether it's an appropriate spend. Councillor Resto?
Just for, I agree with you 100%. I think that's what was proposed by their CEO, and she presented to us was if there is an opportunity, they'll come back to council and they'll have that discussion, much like we did this current year. with The other health organization that came back to council.
Okay, so just hands to Councillor Resto.
Oh, it's a question. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So if you're clear on whatever Councillor Resto said. Okay, next item is the library budget. The library came to council with a request of over 20% increase to their 25 contribution. Staff has come back and recommended that we fund at 4%, which is a reasonable year expenditure. So, questions, comments, Councillor Pittering?
How did they come up with 20% decrease? That.
I believe that all members of council received the library budget and report from the library CEO. I'm not sure when we look at what's been funded over the last several years, it's been very consistent. So I'm not.
I mean, Ms. Brad can probably explain that a little bit and give some context, and I know Councilor Nick may.
Yeah, if you do have their 2026 operating budget that they submitted to council, you'll see changes in a couple areas. One is they are have reduced their transfer from reserve line in their, they've considered it revenue. They've reduced the revenue from reserve. Other small changes to the revenue, but the other revenue changes are quite small. It is really that difference in the reserve transfer. In their expenses, the big change is their salaries and benefits line. There are sort of small changes all through their expenditure levels, and I'm not sure if that actually represents, an increase of expected costs, or if it is an increase of change of level, like they're going to purchase more things. Because when you look at where their actuals are, but yeah, those are the two sort of areas where they've done significant changes, is in salaries and wages, and then they were funding more from reserve in 2025 than they are proposing in the 2026.
Do we know what the current reserve position of the library is at this time?
Did you get that from?
I may, it's in the range of $325,000, I believe. Give or take.
Councillor LeBar?
You, I believe Councilor Nichols sits on the board, so I was just wondering.
On the reserve.
Yeah, but no, I guess, do you have any idea what the reserve is being kept for? Or is this not a situation that it could be used in? Like when it's looking, it's nearly, it's a large portion of an annual full operating budget. So I'm just wondering, there must be conversations about what is being built up so highly. Would anyone know?
Doctors.
Councillor Nichols?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was basically for future capital expenditures, all 5 of the branches, whether they wanted to expand, add a washroom, get more services for the community. with the 5 branches, it's a little bit harder to maintain just one photocopier being here, so they're trying to expand more things elsewhere. And things just cost more. The books that were $30 3 or 4 years ago are now 40, 42. Then you just flip screens, sorry. Like her statistics are up year to year, the CEOs. Programs offered from the previous year were up 46%. Program participation was up 33%. New card holders was up 5.4%. So I think the statistics are speaking for themselves. More people are using and accessing the services. It's just things cost more in the community.
Councillor Cutter?
Thank you. It looks, when I look at the budget, it looks big. The salaries and benefits, do we know why they're going up by 10%? Are they adding half FTE? It would seem to me that's kind of a key line on the budget. And we need to understand that why.
Well,
Or is
the,
it our place to ask?
I was gonna say, in some ways, it's not our place to ask. There is specific legislation that governs libraries, and it's the Library Act. And it's specifically meant to keep politicians out of the library for whatever reason, I guess, so that we don't, take books off the shelf. It's meant to keep the operations very separate. So there is a library board, and that board is responsible for developing developing their budget and approving their budget. We can ask questions about it, but at the end of the day, we don't have any influence over how the library sets its budget. The only question left for us is at what level we will fund the library. So, you can see the different revenue sources there, and obviously the largest revenue source for the library itself is the contribution from the municipality. And that's the only question in front of us, how much money will the municipality fund the library? And after that, it's up to the library board to determine what they will do. So if they request a 20% increase and we approve a 10% increase, it will be up to that board to determine either how they need to expand the revenues or how they need to cut back their expenditures in order to meet their budget. But it really is outside of the purview of council to discuss the lines of the budget specifically. It really is that board operates independently. Okay, questions? Councilor.
Right through you. So the new sheet that we received from Ms. Craddock shows minus 86,000. And the original budget handbook showed that we were gonna have a variance of 104,000. So is this saying that the variance, if we accept your new sheet, would just be about, what is that, 18,000? Instead of the 104?
Instead of the 100.
Yeah, which is accounts to like, what would be?
4%.
4%?
Yeah. So,
But it's difficult to like just say, hey, we'll just cap you at 4% if we don't actually know, like, will that greatly affect their operations or what they can provide the community, right? Like, I do agree 22% is extremely high. And there may have to be some sort of speak in there, but it's odd without knowing these things, right? Like, I understand that we can't be too involved with what they're spending it on, but because if they really, in my opinion, saying it nicely would be steal a bit back from the reserves if you're at an 80% off annual operating budget. If you need to make up some of that shortfall, but we still can increase our contribution by $18,000, which is 4%, which I see somewhere here the average was or never went up above 2.7% in 10 years. So at least they're showing we're still supporting. I'm a little worried about what kind of effect it has.
yeah, so with the reserve at 325, the thing with the library, remember, is that they don't actually own any of the buildings that they sit in. All of the buildings that they own are municipally owned. They pay a rent, I'm gonna assume that the rent line on the budget is what they pay the municipality every year.
It's, yeah, sort of a static amount that predates me, that sits in there, yeah.
And there's not been an increase to that rent amount. So when there are capital improvements needed on the buildings, those are funded through the facilities budgets. Correct?
It depends on the type of capital projects that they do.
If the field library needed a new roof.
Yeah, we would certainly look at that, but I know that recently they've made improvements, let's say at the Sturgeon Falls Library where they've repainted and they've moved a wall actually, and so that came out of their budget.
Okay.
We help them coordinate that, especially when we're dealing with contractors. But yeah, the bulk of the work required on the buildings, walkways, doors, washroom, we would pay through facilities, correct? That being said, I know that we've had ongoing discussions about this library here, and the use of our public washrooms and some of the issues we've encountered the last couple of years. So if they wanted, let's say, a dedicated washroom for the public, the Sturgeon Falls Library here within the confines of their space, then that's something we'd have to discuss to see how we tackle that, whether they do it through their reserve or partner up with them.
So. Okay, Councillor Nicol. Okay, Councillor Restal.
Are you sure? I'll try to be clearer than it was last time. Because
Oh, no,
my water's pretty bad. Okay, so through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just curious on the budget, or sorry, on the reserve number that we heard, is that including what they had in their 2025 budget that's going to go back in? Because they had a super significant amount in their 2025 budget of $71,000 that they were drawing from reserve, and they only used under $500. So is the 300 and change that we just heard, is that 71 going back into that amount? So they're actually at 4 and change?
So I assume that the 325 was their ending position in 2024. And so, and what they've got for the 500 from reserve is probably a bit of a misleading number at this point. Because you see that right there actually on with the $500 from reserve they're actually in a deficit at this point in time. So they're going to have to at year end adjust that number to not be in a deficit. So I assume that what they're doing is waiting to the end of the year in order to do a reserve transfer to fix whatever their deficit is at the end of the year.
Okay, and I guess just aside from that as well, I'm sure they're doing like we're trying to do and not rely on reserves as much, because that number too is significant. It's like $69,000 less from 25 to 26 in terms of their budget. But for my 2 cents, I'm in agreement with what's been proposed. I think 4 is more than what they've said they've been receiving on average over the last couple of years at 2.7, I think it was. So it's still a bit of it's probably a 50% increase in what their regular increase was if you're going from 2.7 to 4. But I agree too. I think 22 is just, it's pretty far stretch.
Thank you, Councillor Restal. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure how to word this nicely. I think there were some communication gaps with the board in the former CEO. And I think Mr. Pilon's trying hard and he's bridging the gaps and he's making great strides with the board. Because, for example, there was a 2024 annual report that was prepared and provided to him to give to council multiple times, and it wasn't shared with us. So to the board every new year, once there's the numbers are finalized and in place, to present these numbers and statistics to council so everybody can be aware and you can all make an informed decision for the following year. But just wanted to clarify, there has been an attempt to share information with us, just has not got here. And I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just trying to let you all know the numbers. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. So there's a proposal on the table, to approve the library contribution at a 4% increase over 2025 numbers. And I just wanted to get an idea on who's in favor with that. If that's good, we'll move forward with that. If not, we can have some discussion. So the 4% increase as proposed.
There's one more.
Okay, Councillor Restoll has one more question.
It's quick, and it's probably 3 minutes. Mr. Braddock, I'm just curious, and I might be way off here, probably. But in their piece here, we touched on rent, but there's also insurance there. Is there anything changing potentially with their insurance costs, or is that something completely separate? I know it's separate, but is that the realm of insurance costs? Is it completely different than what we're dealing with at our table?
No, when we allocate the insurance costs across departments, the municipality in its general government takes care of the insurance for the facilities and all the rest, and the library just picks up their contents insurance. So absolutely, it's going to come down as well in the future year. Yes,
So that'll save them a
a little bit. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to get a 4% increase. Okay, so that's how we'll proceed on that piece of the puzzle. Okay, those were kind of the two decision points now, as Madam Craddock indicated, there were some savings in regards to our insurance costs this year. And the community services reserve, I'm sure that number will change slightly now. The difference in it is the other thing, however you structure that. In our meeting, I had suggested that it go into the community services because we know that we have 3 large projects on the community services front that we are looking at financing. And my thought process on it is that even though we are still going to need financing for this, for these projects, anything that we can do that will lessen the amount that we need to finance and mitigate the ongoing long-term costs to future councils, we should pay what we can when we can. And so, I said, if we've got those savings, we know that we've got the wharf, we know we have Goulartburg, we know that we have some kind of solution with the Brenner Municipal Building. So, but that was what I thought, and if somebody else has a different idea on how to approach that, I definitely. Questions, comments, Councilor Pagani?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I understand good, the 446,000, that's savings we had. And what was the part from the savings for water and sewer?
Well, so water and sewer, it's going to just be I haven't got the whole in front of me because we haven't presented the budget, so it's not going to be quite the same on that end of things, but water and sewer is about $100,000 of savings. Water and sewer.
The reason I'm asking, water and sewer is not part of this,
I know,
so
okay. But we do the water and sewer budget separately from,
that's,
so when we get to the water and sewer budgeting piece, Ms. Craddock will have the update on the insurance and all of that. Like, they're 2 completely unrelated budget documents, right?
That's why I bring it up.
What?
We're having savings there for the community as a whole, but this water and sewer is a lot less resident. So the two should not mix.
They don't.
Don't.
So the total savings off of the insurance has been split between our general municipal budget, the water and wastewater. I'd like, they've been apportioned to each. So when we do our solid waste for garbage and environmental services, we will see a reduction in insurance on that piece, on that specific special budget. We will also see the reduction in insurance, what's apportioned to the water and sewer operations. So Ms. Craddock has already done the work of taking the total savings and apportioning them out to the different areas of operation, and we'll see those savings in the separate budgets.
Okay, so the 100,000 is not part of the.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
easy.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's fine.
Councilor Resto?
I was just gonna share the next line that you're getting to, I think, so next was the DSAP portion. We have a meeting on Wednesday and, I'll definitely do my best. Get us a better number than that. And I know that the folks as well, all municipal, leaders in their communities, and I'll be looking to see what we can do in terms of creative ways to lowering that. So
Do you know offhand if North Bay's in budget deliberations yet?
the city,
Yeah, the city
I'm
and,
not sure.
because I remember last year, Mayor Tirico kind of put his foot down on the DSAP increases, and because they hold the balance of power on that board. So it'd just be interesting to know where North Bay Council is coming in on that proposed 6%.
It affects us all.
Yeah.
And everybody has and then the politician here saying this, but everybody has taxpayers' best interests at heart when we're sitting at this table, that table. There's ways that we can lower the, the impact or the cost on increases. We definitely try to do that. I can share that December is a pretty good functioning board. And like I said, we meet Wednesday afternoon and touch base following that to see where the first day is. To let, to keep us and we're not finalizing this. I think if we can get something a little bit lower, that saves taxpayers a little bit more.
Well, and unfortunately, the situation is in this current economic climate, the demand for the services that are provided by DSAB are at an all-time high. And so, it's a balance between, us doing our budget at this table, but also ensuring that appropriate services that are offered by DSAB are actually available for residents. So you've got a challenging job ahead of you for sure. Councillor Halloran.
One last question. I'm just curious, if we save $450,000 almost in insurance, how much, how the hell we pay a year?
You want to know?
Yeah.
Well, last year, we were $1,374,000 in insurance. And we are going to be at just $780,000 plus taxes on it, so about $834,000. So we're saving. Yes, it's almost cut in half our pre-tax number.
Don't get me wrong there, it's good. But it's the first time I see insurance going down because mine are just going up. So just on those savings, that represent over 2%. Yeah, we're lucky. We won't be there next year.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, overall on the document that Ms. Craddock provided, are there other questions to the adjustments or shifts? Councillor Fede?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On operational.
Well, either one.
Okay. just an idea I've had, after, the email from, Mrs. Henning and she's going about the data science, the speed, signs. I'm wondering if, we could maybe consider having a couple more out of the operation budget or out of the lease.
Okay, I don't know why.
I believe they're $6,000 each. Should be all.
Sorry, I would like to ask Mr. Gillon his thoughts on that. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly a decision of council. If you like, I believe how many do we have now?
We have two right now.
We have two. So, and we have the ability to move them around quite effectively. So, from that perspective, there is the initial cost and, their lifespan is, I think they're guaranteed for 5 years or so.
I'm not sure of the warranty on them, but
Yeah, either way, I mean, we could always use more of these things to slow traffic down, but it'd certainly be a decision from the council with regards to where we sit on those particular expenditures. We already have two. I'm not sure what the nominal number would be for our community, given the span of geography. However,
I know that for resources in terms of just staff resources to move them around and to find good locations and stuff like that, I think if we go to more signs, we might struggle with the upkeep of moving them around, of monitoring them, because if you're putting them in locations, we obviously know we've got vandalism and theft and things that occur in our community, and so we need to be making sure that once they're up, that we're monitoring that nothing's happening to them. So at this point, I don't think that we have a great need. We don't get a lot of calls of speed requests. And I haven't heard from the OBP that there is a huge issue. So we're continuing to move our signs around as we get those in, but I don't think we have such a demand that we would need to increase those signs at this time.
Council, get Larrabee.
They should be close to their 5 years, if not a little bit more, because I remember we purchased them a while back. There is, like you were saying, we get to move them around. We've got a couple of them, so we get to move them around. One way, the other one, reading on the road itself. Sometimes you don't get complaints. The complaint stays at the coffee shop and it don't go out. Because I know I hear in my community, River Valley, right on the main road, right in town, people I get complaints that people speed up. So if those signs could be there for a couple of weeks or whatever, that would kind of slow things down and then keep moving in their different areas.
Councilor Stoll.
I think, I don't want to get, if I'm off, I'll save it for another time. I'm just curious about through you, Madam Mayor, do we collect data on these? And is that data used with our law enforcement agency and I know they're a deterrent and you're driving. I know when you go, you see, okay, I'm red, I'm 60, 50, great, I'll slow down. But do we use those to?
Councilor Gagne can probably answer that question as he's the chair of the police board.
The reports are shared with the OPP. And the beauty of sharing the reports with the OPP is they'll analyze it. They'll talk about it at the board. And if they see that there is a potential issue, they will assign at no cost. If we don't ask them to assign officers at a specific time in a specific location, we're not charged for that additional service. But if we do, then we will be directly charged. If we say we want levying from the July 1st to July 31st, we want cops to be stationed there 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 and from 4 to 6 o'clock. And there's a speeding issue in that area, we will be directly charged. But if we give them the report, they have to look at it and then they'll assign according to the service that they need to put in place. So it's a better option, I think. As far as requests that we've had from the police board, I think 2 is sufficient at the moment. I know we've had requests in the in the past for Laving, which I think will be addressed hopefully this summer. And also for River Valley when we did our meeting in the River Valley area. And besides that, all the other requests, we've actually had some data from those units and as far as I know, knock on wood, they're pretty much up to date with any request that's been made to either the police board or we've heard of. We try to get those signs in different locations as much as Public Works can handle them. So I don't know if you have something to add.
Just to add, when we talk about certain areas, we have to keep in mind too, that if they are highways, then we would have to go through the MTO and get permission to put them on, have it on 7. We've had it on 17, but that's on our connecting link. Like we're looking at moving to an area that is a provincial highway, then we can't just go put it up there. It's a process to get that permission.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks for the information.
Give us that one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Oui, moi, je suis en faveur des 2 scènes for sure qu'on a. Les mouver, parce que si ça reste trop longtemps à mes places, tu rentres à Sturgeon puis tu la vois bloquée. There's no effect anymore. Mais certainement, l'année prochaine, j'aimerais en avoir une sur le chemin Eugène, qu'on vient de pader, puis sur le chemin Lavac. Parce que ça garantit que l'année prochaine, ça va causer.
On va aussi le pavé.
Okay, what's that?
Back already had it
Okay.
last summer.
For all summer.
Last summer. It wasn't the happy smiley facey one.
I do just want to just wrap this up then. Councillor Ferrin had proposed that we look at getting 2 additional, and I just don't want to be sure, 1 additional. I just want to be sure that we deal with the request properly. Who in council would be in favor of adding that somewhere within our that would be operational because it's 6,000 operational budget. Okay. No one else. Okay, other questions or comments on the budget as a whole? Councillor Ferrin?
We may need to have a conversation about the Denonville Bridge.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Denonville Bridge doesn't appear anywhere in our capital plan. I'll pass the floor to Mr. Goodall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As most of you will likely have been aware, we did have, I see the Denonville group back in the room, waiting quietly and patiently back there. We did have a meeting between Councillor Gagne, Councillor Larrabee, the mayor, myself, and the group. And obviously there was a lot of discussion with regards to what has occurred, what the situation is, the history behind the bridge, what it services, which properties it services, and certainly worthy of some discussion or continued discussion with council based on what our next steps may possibly be. And I know that you may have some comments on this piece, but so where did we find room within the 2026, potentially the 2026 budget? Certainly that's a decision that needs to be made by council. The recommendation from staff obviously would be to kind of remain status quo. I can say that that bridge is on a yearly inspection schedule rather than every 2 years. There has been an inspection that occurred in November. We're waiting for that report to be coming back any day now. With respect to if there have been any drastic degradations to the bridge. It's currently under a load limit for light vehicle traffic. And just waiting to see if we need to make any further or bring any further information to council on that particular piece. Now, at this point, it just remains, what are the options? The options are essentially perhaps to look at potential options for access through from the north side of the river, which would involve road allowances or some agreements with potentially another property owner or a repair to the bridge. So right now, next steps have been determined as We need a full survey of the bridge and a full engineer design just to determine exactly what the scope of work is. But it's certainly, those are not cheap to prefer and to organize and to get done. And we're in the range of about, $150,000 to $180,000 if we were to entertain doing any further repairs, and that's just to determine exactly what the scope of work is. I know there's been a lot of discussion with regards to, outside options, I will say, with different contractors. But as I detailed to the group and to those that were present at the meeting, there was a lot of legislation surrounding municipal bridges, different coding, different levels of inspection, different all of those pieces really under various pieces of legislation that we are responsible for, where this isn't just a privately owned bridge, it's a government owned or a municipally government managed bridge. So we're in a position where we just need perhaps some further direction from council as to how you wish staff to proceed.
Thank you. Councillor Larrabee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As far as the a report from the engineer for the bridge itself, the companies that are out there, like Algonquin, that bridge comes with a certification. Okay, you don't need to have an engineer on that bridge because it's just like buying a prefab home. You don't need to go get all the inspection to it because it's pre-manufactured. So that is a cost as far as the engineering. But you still, like you mentioned the other day, you still need the soil test, make sure that compacted or it meets the requirement.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate your comments, Councillor Larrabee. That's on a full replacement. Like if you're looking at a full replacement, just material wise, I'm sure that company, knows their thing when it comes to replacing bridges or whatnot. But, the fact of the matter is the abutments need to be examined, I think, a little bit. Well, they do need to be examined further, they need to be surveyed. And there needs to be basically that level of certification and inspection that occurs through an engineer, through a full design, to just exactly find out, okay, is the soil good? I know Ms. Henning can speak to this a little bit better than I can, but that's really where we are as far as next steps. This is where we would be. We're not entertaining looking at. We can continue to look at those options if council is willing to go that step and to do some further work on that piece. Really, the options have been presented to us from the experts and the subject matter expertise in this matter, and this is exactly where our next steps would lie. And it does involve, a significant expenditure on behalf of the municipality. So, Sandy, if you have any comments on that.
Nothing to add to that. Algonquin Bridge is one of the companies I did speak with. They do the bridge, they don't do abutments, right? So a huge portion of your bridge cost is the abutments, not just the bridge itself.
If I may, for the abutment, would it be accepted, the same material that's there now? But pressure treated?
I couldn't speak to that without a proper structural assessment on the bridge.
Because the way that bridge was built is timber, and they filled it up with rocks. Trail Lumber Bridge was also built that way, so if that would be acceptable, because that was built that way, then it would really render the cost right down. Instead of going with those concrete blocks, Legos, kind of call it.
Well, and if we were to get an engineer on board to do a design for us, I'm sure they would look at all of those options.
Councillor Hohenrein.
Thank you very much. We did visit that bridge with Monsieur Legault. It's all cribbing. I guess way back it was treated, but they're rotting. We got something from Monsieur Bélanger in Sudbury from Bélanger Construction. I think he's the owner or something. And I believe that Monsieur Legault told us he's an engineer. So I'm sure they do, if he is, I think I recall that. If he's ready to back up his job with his certificate or whatever, I don't know how it works. But I think it's worth looking at it. Because I'm just thinking, I know we got planners and we go to outside the firm, but I remember also Eugene Bridge. Hey, remember that? From 2 million to 600,000. So I don't know. I'd like to see if it's possible. If Mr. Bélanger is an engineer and he's got a valid license, if they do that type of work, I'm sure all around.
That's what he does.
That's what he does. So if he's ready, it'd be somebody to talk to, because he was talking about something like 200 something thousand to change it to abundance. I don't know. That's a conversation I think we should have with that contractor.
So they have full conversation about what we do, is probably not the one for budget. You know, we're here to discuss the budget tonight. So the question is, does council want to put aside some money? And then the other question for staff is that if we get into March, April, May, and there is a decision by council to do A, B, C, or D, how will that be funded?
That entirely depends on what ABC and D is. If you're at this time looking at that, you just want to fund that next stage of overall bridge evaluation, that more detailed engineering that will tell us whether the soil is good and the abutments are good and what the plan forward is going to be. You know, I would take a look at sort of the estimated from Miss Henning on what that is, and so look at whether that goes into this year's budget. You remember when we talked the infrastructure budget the very first time, you had $2 million sitting for Corsall Road in there, and I said, and yes, we can't do Corsall Road because we don't have $2 million. There are funds therefore that are not being, so that in all the infrastructure reserves and infrastructure money, not everything is being allocated in 2026. So there is built in some of those reserves carrying forward so that in 2027, when we can manage Corsall Road because of all the other road closures and all the rest, that you're partially there already with the funds. And so I would take a look at, what the estimate is and where that fits into, if we're just looking at doing that first stage, that $100,000. Now, if we come in, as you said, April or whatever, and we're looking at, well, actually, we would like to do the whole bridge replacement, and whether the bridge replacement is $600,000 or $1.5 million, your choices are then. So if it's 1.5, there's not money for it this year, period. There's not. If it's 600,000, then you're saying, okay, I will deplete my reserves down to zero. And that means next year, Corsall Road is probably not on the books because you're simply not going to have the funds in a single year to manage doing Corsall Road. So it is where council is going to have to start making the choices on which projects you're funding. So no, if you make a mid-year decision that you want to do a bridge, whether it's 600,000 or 1.5 million, make that mid-year decision that you want to do it in 2026, it is going to be a difficult proposition to find the funding for it.
Questions, Councilor?
Thank you. The thing is, for the Corsall Road, it needs to be done, but it's still drivable on it. The bridge, that's a livelihood of families that will no longer be able to continue. So I think that, you know, that's the difference there. They, you know, it could be rough, but it's still passable. The other one won't be. And last year we had an engineer report. That's what council asked.
That's the condition report, though. That's not an engineering report on what needs to be done as far as like what the full repair or replacement would look like. The engineering report is just an inspection for the condition of the bridge at that time. It's not to determine the scope of work for a replacement or repair. Counselor
Thank you.
Conrad?
Yeah, I'm scared that even changing the two abutments, if we get there, I think the bridge still has to be inspected because it had a little dip in it. Then we're going way over. So my question is, you talk about a road on the north side. How long and what do you think would the cost be? Roughly.
You know, it's hard to say what the cost would be on that piece. I mean, we can certainly, if that's a direction that council wants us to go into and look at that option. Right now, what we have is if we're looking to even consider rehabbing the bridge or fixing the bridge or whatever scope of work needs to be done, we're gonna need some support from council to spend that type of money because we're not into a situation where we can just kind of throw darts on the wall and the cost may be increased. At the end of the day, I think in the conversation that we had with the group as council, as you know, stewards of municipal funds, this is like any bridge infrastructure is a long-term investment. Like we all need to realize that at some point, this 80-year-old bridge will likely have to be piece by piece replaced somehow, somewhere, however long that's going to take. It's just kind of an eventuality that's going to occur. With regards to a road on the north side, we have Ayotte Road that really comes right into Mr. Ayotte's property. And I think the distance is something like, and I think it's a couple kilometers. And I believe there's one creek that needs to cross over to even get to the first, abutting property, which would be Mr. Parker's property or Mr. Robinson's property rather. And then there's another property owned by Mr. Robinson. And then we're talking about Mr. Legault and Shuchek. So there's significant challenges to that option as well. But if that's an option that needed to be looked at, and I know the Denonville group was open to conversation with regards to, well, if we can get the road to a certain point, that they would, perhaps position or through discussion, be willing to come to some agreement. But, that's a difficult piece, I think. So is it possible? Certainly, anything's possible. How much it will cost, it's difficult to say. Maybe Ms. Henning can talk about that. I don't know what the terrain is like, and I'm not exactly sure about the distance and how that would look.
You know what? I don't know that I want to put Miss Henning on the spot to kind of, make estimations off the top of her.
It's all supposition at this point, Mayor, so.
Well, that's,
I don't know.
that's just it. The question for me is there money available? Because we have met with the property owners. Mr. Pilon has sent the follow-up. I'm sure he's had conversations with staff. We're just not at the point where we know, if we're going to go through with an engineering report on that, that will have to come back to council. But as Ms. Craddock indicated, there is money in this year's budget allocated to another project that is not going to happen this year. That we could use if we need to resolve that issue. Councillor Ferrin.
Thank you. I think if we adopt the status quo, we'll effectively be kicking this in the long grass until 2027, because if we're not putting any money aside for anything, then we can't really, at the very least, I think maybe we should
move ahead with the engineer's report. It's a piece of municipal infrastructure at the moment, and it still is. And we need to have the conversation at this table to how much we are willing to spend, if any, and make that decision. I know I'll put my cards on the table. If a new bridge would cost 1.8, it would be very difficult for me to make the decision to spend 1.8 million taxpayers' money for a bridge that serves 4 properties. If the cost was 500,000 or 600,000, then I'd be tempted to take the opposite view. And I think there's an amount somewhere in the middle that, or not at all, that this table, everyone at this table has to agree on. Because, and we can't have the conversation until we have a better idea of how much it's gonna cost.
But knowing,
So-
I think the challenge is knowing how much it's gonna cost. It's gonna
But-
cost.
Then maybe
You know.
that's the 180, 150, 180 is what we say. To get to the point where we can find out how much it's gonna cost. And then we can have the conversation and make the decision. But if we adopt the status quo, we kick it in the long grass, we're making no decision. And the bridge is at the mercy of the next engineers or next inspection report, which is due now. And at some point, one of those inspection reports will say it has to close immediately. So, I feel that we should do what we need to do to find out how much it's going to cost. Because we will never be able to make an informed decision otherwise.
I saw Councillor Restool.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, certainly.
I think some of them are quick, but or one's not a question, one is a comment. And if it's a decision between a major artery that serves the hospital and the throughway, and yeah, it's passable, but another year tacked on to where we're at right now. Passable is a very loose term, right? Who knows what it's going to look like? And we've been talking around this table about that project being completed or work on it last year, completed this year, moving it to next year. My thought is I don't want this moved to 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. Because there's a lot of other infrastructure that goes along with just that roadway, which is, sidewalks and other infrastructure for that whole area. So that's my thought on that. Like ruffle feathers, but question to have everything on the table is, what if we don't own the bridge? What if we don't service the bridge? What happens in that case? What if the bridge is sold?
Can I speak to that, Thorny?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you, Madam. From what I remember, when the property owners made their presentation, is that the ownership for them was not possible because they wouldn't be able to get insurance. That's what I seem to remember. I don't know if anyone else here recalls this, but I seem to remember that was the case. That for them, ownership is not an option.
And just to that, and I'm going back to my other comment as well, from what I understand right now. But bridge is passable, right? It's on a reduced load, but it's still passable. We've been here before, right? And I understand where you're coming from, Councilor Front, and I think the same way. If we don't do anything, then, for those of us who are sitting here are gonna be sitting here next November talking about the same thing again. I think part of the bigger decision is, how much do you want to invest on something with the secondary thought of, are you willing to continue on with that process once you get information back? What's the value? And I say this in a respectful way. of spending $150,000-$180,000 on something that, you know, we talked about this earlier tonight. We're spending money on something that might not go anywhere. We talked about this on the building in Vernon as well. How much do we invest into a building that we don't know if we're gonna continue with it, or what's the long term? It's a long term, you know, process. So that's me sharing thoughts without any kind of answers in my own head, but how much do we want to invest in something without having any sense of what we're gonna do with the information that $150,000 or $180,000 of taxpayers' money is gonna go to?
Yeah. Councillor Rivard.
Thank you. Through your Madam Mayor. I really appreciate Councillor Ristol's comments. It's, for me, like when we were mentioning about the road and then Mr. Peel mentioned for some additional information, I think that's key, because I do not want to put any money into a study for the bridge if we already kind of know based on past experience, the bridge cost will be more than what we're willing. We've already had this discussion. And then we kind of got these lower numbers that came out. But we have to trust also our staff where they mentioned that this bridge based on another project will cost in the range of this amount. So that's where my trust lies. But for me, it's feasible option is that to get a cost and feasibility study of that potential road. And if there's any money we put into this, I think we put money into that project, not the bridge, because then when we find out that the bridge is anywhere from 600,000 to 1.8 million used, there's a great chance that we're still just gonna say, oh, just do the road for 300,000. And spending, we're just spending on something where I remember from our other conversations, if there's an opportunity out there, so we had asked for that kind of information so that we can make a more informed decision how to move forward. Still haven't really, it sounds like there's some work that's been put into the road and looking to see if it's feasible or whatnot, but that's what I need to see before making a complete decision. Is that even possible, and what would be a potential cost for that? And then if that's not even possible or whatnot, then we come back to the bridge. But as of right now, I think we're kind of going in circles. When the bridge, we had all pretty unanimously decided that it was a very hefty cost for what it services, and we were looking at different options. So I wouldn't be able to support any money going into it until we have that study done or research. And I had the same question as Councillor Restel for the private bridge, but I guess that's not possible, so won't touch that. And yeah, I just appreciate the whole. Of course, so is, like, I understand it's the same amount of money and it's passable. They're both passable right now, but one is used by a far larger majority of the community. So you got to take that into account when you look at priorities. It's not just this project is 1.8, this project's 1.8. It's the community as a whole benefits most from that $1.8 million investment, and who will, not saying one's more important than the other, but.
Councillor Pallery.
Yeah, so same here. That's what I was gonna suggest. I'd like to have a study. Probably it can be done from our own staff. Exactly how long and what it would cost with the, I don't know, so many inches of heavy gravel, and it doesn't have to be top notch there, but as long as people can get to their farm. I'd like a price on that.
Okay.
Just to be clear, we don't own any of that land.
No, but
That's gonna be the first challenge, like, just so that I'm clear, Madam Mayor and Council, that we can
There
certainly
may
make
not
those,
be an opportunity.
we can make those inquiries, but if the landowner is not on board, and if the agreement is not sufficient to service these properties that the bridge normally services, then, you know, we are limited in options. I just want to caution everybody on that particular piece.
because a road would be the ultimate, it'd be the end, no more worry about the bridge and yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay, Counselor Larrabee.
As far as the road is concerned, if we could get an agreement with the landowner, the first landowner, then they said they could work it out amongst themselves to have a lease agreement to go on from one property to the next. But we need to look into the first, would be the first landowner, that we need to look at.
And beyond if
Yeah.
there's no agreement, right? If there's no, I mean, for us to drive that road from where the bridge intercepts it from the Ayat property is a significant distance and crossing, it would cross a number of properties that none of which we own.
There used to be, but it's never got registered. But an old road, when they were doing logging and putting the wood on the water to bring down to the mill. So that would be rehabitable, but we need to talk to Monsieur Ayat first, see if we can pass on this problem.
So
With Madam Mayor, just if I make, with an agreement with the homeowners, it would become just a forced road. Like all the roads we have in the municipality.
Or road allowance agreement.
Or a lot of, but it could be a forced road too, then there's no cost to the municipality or the homeowners. Because that's what we have right now is 95% of our roads are not owned by the municipality. It's all forced roads. So it's something we could look at too. Or a right of way.
just want to pivot the discussion back to being in relation to this year's budget, which is what the topic on the table is. And, you know, Mr. Keaton in the meeting with the property owners and us last week. already talked about these different options, and I know that they are things that staff is looking into. In terms of our budget for this year. If somebody has a proposal, put it forward, we can vote on it. But I'd just like to, you know, we can't spend another hour on the subject itself because this is our budget meeting. So Counselor,
Madam Mayor. Can't see my name. I was just waiting. That basically was going to be my comment was that I believe Ms. Craddock did mention that if council, we want a engineering process done between 150 to 180, there is some money there in one of the reserves or so personally, I don't think none of it should go on next year's budget. If we're gonna move forward with an engineering survey or whatnot, then let's go into that dedicated reserve for Cursol or whatnot and deal with that. However, with that said, I 100% agree with everybody else that the rest of the money for Cursol should stay for Cursol for the following year. So my recommendation would just say to leave our budget as is for this year, and when required to do the engineering, let's look into another reserves and go from there.
thank you. Got a proposal on the table from Councillor St. Louis. I think we've all had an opportunity to discuss the issue at length. I would expect that, you know, in my opinion, I'm with Councillor Ferran in the fact that a decision needs to be made. Even if it is a difficult decision. You know, I don't think that you know, one of our responsibilities as municipal councillors is to make sometimes hard decisions. So following the meeting that we had last week, I would like to see something come back to council sooner rather than later with the options. So, you know, there is a road option. It may potentially cost this much. There is this, and the engineering, just to find out what we need would be this, but based on other projects, it's likely going to cost this much to fix. Like, we just need to have some numbers and some ideas, because the property owners that we met with, although very passionate about their property, I think also understand, the difficulty of this decision, given the high cost of this particular piece of infrastructure. And one way or another, they deserve answers. Like they deserve some kind of finality to what's going on with their lives. So Councillor St. Louis has suggested that for now, we leave the budget at it as is. We know that there is money going into the for sold property being put aside. We also have some, may have some reserve somewhere. But we can find a way to do what we need to do when the time comes, because we know we do have some public works infrastructure money there. And so I'd just like to see who's in favor of that approach at this time. Okay, good, thank you. With that, we're gonna take a recess. I believe we're a half hour over, but we started the discussion on the Denonville Bridge at 7:25, which was 5 minutes before the break, and I didn't want to break halfway through. Mover and a seconder for recess, please. Councillor Rivard, Councillor Larrabee.
Moved by Councillor Rivard and seconded by Councillor Larrabee. At approximately 8 PM, a motion was tabled for a 10-minute recess.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, welcome back after a brief recess at our budget meeting for December 15th. We've gone over a lot of the pieces that have been presented after our first two meetings. No,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and just wondering if there's other points to clarify or any other questions on behalf of council with regards to the presentation that occurred tonight and previous meetings, if there's anything you haven't touched upon or have neglected to address. Certainly feel free to point us in the right direction. We can have further discussion if you like.
okay. Oh, Councilor Bar.
I feel like I already know the answer, but I didn't get to ask it last time. It was regarding the HR cost of the organization as a whole. I see last year we had budgeted like 10.8, which was, I believe, taken into account the potential like assessments we did for management staff, but non-management staff. The other. And then the projected is at 9.7, and now we're budgeting 11.15. We were $1 million under this. I understand we had a lot of people that weren't staff. We had a lot of vacancies gapping, but then we're also increasing another 500,000. I was just wondering, so does that account for like we were 10, 12 staff short this year? But I don't like just some clarification.
Yeah, if I may, so the increase from 25 to 26 budget to budget is just that $380,000 you see there, budget increase. But yes, we were down substantially in what we look like we're going to be at the end of the year. It's not 10 or 12 vacancies, but it is related to vacancies, yes. So both positions that were vacant for and we've talked about them a couple times in our quarterly updates. So, the mechanic position, the project management position, and why those positions were vacant for the year. And then we had some other ones within community services that we are filled now, but took most of the year to fill, as well as just sort of rotating vacancies in our public works operations primarily. So yes, that's the difference in the projected 2025 to the budget 2025. So when we're looking at the 2026 budget, I assume that those positions are full for the year. Now, some of those positions are still vacant, but we sort of start with as if everybody is going to be here. There were a few, and again, you were speaking about the non-union compensation review. And so when we implemented the new compensation grid, there were a few people that were only getting part of their increase in 2025. We sort of split that increase over the 2 years. So we took most of it in 2025, but there was a portion of that split that was still coming in 2026 to get folks up onto their correct grids, and then just the regular salary increases. Tied up in that HR cost is also some of the benefits portion. So again, you'll remember that I said that we actually were saving on WSIB this year, but things like CPP and EI, they are escalating costs each year. So yes to vacancies for the problem for the surplus in 2025 and 2026, because we're starting as if we've got everybody in those seats all year long as a starting point.
Yeah, and I guess my follow-up was just, so for when you look at 2022, 23, 24, 25, it always increases by about the 380. So if in 2025 we were at the 9.8, I'm surprised that the increase is still. So have we had vacancies for 4 or 5 years at this rate? Are we just not able to fill the positions? Some of the math to me just seems a little off. I don't know.
So not the same positions vacant. So do we have that many vacancies across the year? Probably. We certainly have found that in our recruitment process that we frequently have to go out for the second posting, and we've had some really good hires. It just takes a little longer. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask them. And it's in regards to, the capital, on, fire. And, or sorry, page, oh, 6 of the capital budget. Under. So we have there an approval for a new fire apparatus. At $550,000. And then we have a transfer. Explain that, a transfer to reserve for the 550, well, like. How that, basically what I'm saying is right now we have 3 trucks that we're waiting to get into garages. Some of them were approved 2 years ago. Is there concerns that there will be a significant increase in the price of those apparatus over the last 2 years? Because my recommendation would be not to approve a new purchase this year. Continue with the transfer into reserve. Wait till we actually see how the 3 that are gonna go out for come back in. And get those in the garage and get the surplus sold. Before approving another new purchase, because my concern is now that the money we set aside in 2023 for whatever apparatus we approved that year, that the price may have gone up by $100,000.
If I may, Madam Mayor, so certainly, I believe the chief said last time that delaying or deferring that purchase was manageable within his operation. And yes, so the transfer to reserve, it just means it would stay in reserve. So that, and again, you know, the fire fleet over the, you know, kind of the 5-year window is going to be in trouble very quickly on its fleet replacement schedule if we maintain the size fleet that we have now and the costs continue to escalate. So I certainly would recommend continuing that transfer to reserve. It just will be in reserve, and if we get, you know, reasonable pricing, or you're quite correct, if we, you know, that we haven't gone out for new fire fleet in a really long time, it's going to be a real challenge, you know, and see what comes in. Absolutely, you know. Yeah.
I can elaborate a bit more on that. So in 2017, the price of let me back up. In 2012, the price of a truck the size of what we're looking for was in around 180 to 220,000. By 2018, that same truck had jumped up to 320,000. Speaking with other departments that are ordering trucks right now, you're looking at close to 800,000 for that same size truck. And again, this is the market that's driving these prices. No different than a building or anything else. The longer you wait, the more the price is going to go up. It's very seldom ever going to come down. But through you, Mrs. Chair, again, we had the conversations. Unfortunately, at the time of the amalgamation, a lot of vehicles were purchased in that same couple years. So they're all at that 25, 30-year-old mark that we're hitting. Looking at shuffling the vehicles around from a higher call volume station down to a lower call volume station could potentially get us a few more years out of some of these trucks that are still in reasonable shape. The other challenge we run into is trying to find parts for these trucks. As I mentioned earlier, the one truck, we managed to find a scrapyard over in Quebec to pick up parts to keep it on the road.
I'll have a follow-up question. So with what's in the reserve right now for the 3 that are approved, plus what's being budgeted for this year, you feel that money combined, which would be about 2.5 million. Sorry, I don't have the numbers there. Enough for 4 trucks, like that's all I'm saying. Like if we get these 3 trucks in and there's not enough money to pay for the 3 trucks, then what do we do? What's that? Is that with this year's edition? Sorry, the fire fleet reserve,
That's what the twenty.
is that 2.079, 2.07 million, 2.08 million? And then we were budgeting 550 for this year. Correct?
What you have in your dedicated reserve includes the 2025 allotment to the reserve.
Okay,
And so in the 2026 proposed, it's actually proposed to move from, fleet, the 611 is proposed to move up to $900,000. There's actually already a built-in increase in that transfer to fleet reserve for fire, within the budget that you've got in front of you right now. So then if we have a $900,000 transfer to reserve, there's going to be a little bit of wiggle room on, but only a little bit of wiggle room. But absolutely, if we go out, we've got 3 sort of in the hopper now. Council absolutely can just say, hey, I just wanted to defer that other purchase, or it will be a separate process. And if it comes back in, then you've got the ability to kill the process, the same as we do it when we've had facility projects come in over budget and things like that. We just,
and the plan is not to put out the RFQ for that 4th vehicle until after we get an idea what 1, 2, and 3 are gonna look like as far as costs, or?
we'd like to get those other ones. They're ready to go out the door now. Get them out now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody found people. Any other questions? Councillor Fedad?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Maybe, I'm sorry if I missed this in a previous meeting, but what's been the delay in ordering the trucks or?
Just trying to get the RFPs together and deal with some of our other capital assets that we've prioritized.
Councillor Rivera.
Sorry, through you. So how, once it wasn't one of these trucks budgeted 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yes, the rescue.
Who do we have working on these RFPs that do those normally take 2 years to?
And again,
I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
just wondering, yeah.
So again, we had the rescue work again. I will take responsibility that my plan was to have these RFPs out a couple of years ago, at least for the rescue, and then last year was for the tanker. Years have flown by, and as I mentioned, we end up replacing all our SCBA's for our members and upgrading those systems. Those were part of the capitals from last year. Rededicated some of our priorities to the safety and well-being of the members while I was able to keep the trucks and reduce some of the expenditures on repairs and maintenance. Also looking at, do we have enough in our reserves to be able to afford the trucks as well? As I said, the price has increased. Some of the suppliers are indicating up to 2 years, even after they get approval on the build. We're looking at to 36 months on some of the suppliers right now.
Okay, Councillor Larrabee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Those vehicles that we're buying are new
Yes.
vehicles? Okay. I remember we used to, let's say your truck is good for 20 years or 25 years. We used to go try to find some used ones if it was possible. As long as, do the math, there were more years left. So we would be gaining a couple of years by dividing the amount that we paid.
Yes, and I know past practice, the former chief and the chief prior to, and Ms. Craddock can allude to that as well. They were purchasing used trucks from other departments that perhaps had a larger budget and were replacing every 10 years, let's say 5 to 10 years. Those trucks were being purchased. They serve the purpose. And again, this is where, if you look at the spreadsheet of the age of the vehicles, A lot of them are out of up down in, let's say, Florida and stuff that weren't exposed to the salt and
Yeah.
climate that we have here.
But if I may, it ends up, once you got to replace them, a lot of times you gotta replace them altogether because of being already aged when you buy them, so.
Correct.
Like going brand new, you're.
Correct, because if you're, so let's say we replace a 2002 with a 2006 or 2007 truck. Yes, we're gonna save some money on that side of it, not knowing what the truck's been through as far as repairs.
Yeah.
No different than buying any other used vehicle. You get a good one, you get a bad one.
I think it's a good idea to go with you. You're good for 25 years.
Thank you. Councillor Fennec?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, is there a date now by which council could expect? Well, because if the prices are increasing constantly, I think the longer we wait, then we're just gonna get less for our money.
The last one is back on my desk. So then.
Yeah, the rescue is back on your desk.
Yeah.
The tankers are, I'm going through them to make some changes and adjustments as per recommendations. Our plan is to get them out. Again, we're at that Christmas season. It's going to be a little difficult, but
By the end of the year.
hopefully get them out and have them closed or returned by the end of January so we can bring that forward to council to make a decision.
So out by the end of January.
Go back in by the end of January.
Back in by the end of January.
Out and then the proposal to in for.
Out by the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's what I'm shooting for.
Hey, Councillor Restal, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I'm just through you, Madam. I'm just curious if I heard it right. So you mentioned that once we get an order confirmed and everything's in place, that it might take up to
Depends.
years to get the vehicle in?
It depends, Councillor Restool, on the supplier. Some suppliers are looking at a 2-year with the amount of builds that they have. Some of the information I've been receiving in the last few months, suppliers are now starting to get cabs and chassis in stock. That was one of the things that took several years after our COVID excursion, I'll call it. 2022, 2023, they were still waiting to get cabs and chassis into their supply house to be able to start building on them. That seems to be, depending on the size of the manufacturer, being reduced to they have 3 or 4 trucks in stock that they can build on.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Open it back up. Any other questions about the budget as a whole? When we're done with that, I'm gonna pass the floor to Ms. Craddock and she's gonna outline the process for the strong mayor budget and what happens next as far as what we need to do with the legislation. Okay, I see no other hands going up, so.
Absolutely, because Ms. Craddock is the expert on this piece. I think that,
So, you know, as we all know, the legislation has changed in regards to the budgeting and we've done our best to develop our own process to circumvent the undemocratic budget process as spelled out in the strong mayor legislation. So Ms. Craddock, what happens now? Like, what do we need to do now in order to keep the legislation and get the process wrapped up?
So we take, so the feedback that was summarized, the feedback that we took today. And as staff, we will consider the council's recommendations to the mayor and we'll repackage the budget in what it looks like your usual, when you get the budget approval where it actually all balances and you see the zero and you've got stuff of that. And so then the mayor will present the budget formally as the mayor's budget. And so whether it's done at a regular council meeting or whether you have another meeting in between for the mayor to present the budget, really it's council's decision. Once the mayor presents the strong mayor budget, without any changes, what would have to happen is that council itself has got 30 days to review what the mayor's proposal would be and to bring back any suggested changes by resolution. If there would be no changes in that 30 days, then the budget is deemed adopted. We're not going to have a resolution back to adopt it. The budget is deemed adopted. If council had additional changes they wanted to make by resolution, then the mayor then has 10 days of time to review council's suggestions and accept them or veto them. And both these dates, because we sort of have an agreement, council can shorten these dates so that again, if council is feeling comfortable with where things are at, and that's looking at a 2.5% increase.
2.85.
2.85, sorry, thank you. Yes, I'm looking at the numbers, yeah, 2.85, a 2.85% increase with the changes that we've discussed here, then council can pass a resolution saying that council doesn't need its 30 days. Council's going to shorten that time frame to 2 days, 5 days, 10 days. And then the mayor's 10-day veto window, the mayor can say, I'm going to shorten that date down to, just a 2 days. So you can compress that time period. Otherwise, we sort of roll through that. If there are council amendments that are proposed, then there's a mayor veto period proposed. If she doesn't veto anything, then it's deemed adopted. If the mayor does veto, then there's another council period where council has the chance to review them. But so council can shorten its windows of reviewing stuff, and the mayor can shorten her veto window in the middle. And that would just mean that we would get to an adopted budget quicker. So that, there's not those separate resolutions that we used to have. We can't even do the approved capital budget resolution type thing because the budget is going to be adopted once all the timelines elapse.
As far as giving Ms. Henning a head start, and we're heading into the holidays, so I don't know how many RFQs you're doing on December 27th, whatever the case may be, but as far as giving her a head start, do we have any other loophole is not the right word.
Mechanisms?
Is there discretion for council to pass a resolution adopting a 2026 capital plan that would at least allow her to proceed the obtaining of quotes, carrying of RFQs and all that stuff?
I'm going to say cautiously, and I'm going to say cautiously only because you have expressed to this council that you do not intend to exercise the strong mayor override on anything. So yes, council could have a resolution adopting the 2026 capital plan. We're not adopting the budget, we're adopting the capital plan. And because you've expressed that you're not going to override any of that process, it could go ahead. But I say it cautiously so that, councilors are aware that if you're back at this table in the next term and we've had a changeover of things, that's not something that council can rely on any longer, because it is going to be at the discretion of whether a strong mayor decides to exercise or not. In this case, you've told your council that you intend.
I'm a big fan of democracy.
Exactly. Yes. So yes, cautiously, because we're in that circumstance, we could have a resolution that approves the capital plan and go forward with that.
Councilor Pavan, did you have a question?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So I'm not sure if I understand everything you said. But could we not, could the mayor not present for budget tomorrow? And could we not vote on it tomorrow? And could we not then decide tomorrow that we may not want to 30 days? And could the mayor not decide tomorrow that she's not going to exercise her 10 days veto and just not pass the whole thing tomorrow?
So we're not going to pass it at all.
Once I present the budget, unless you register a formal request to amend it in some way, whatever you call it, an
Amendment.
Request amendment. Once that time period, it's deemed adopted, this council will not vote on this budget. Once the mayor's budget is presented, that is the budget. Now, we've done this process so that when the working sessions that we've had have taken into account all of our concerns and wants and wishes and how we think things should roll out, So the budget that I come back to you with, the mayor's budget, is going to look like what we've all discussed here in the last 3 meetings that we've had for budget. But once the mayor's budget is tabled, unless there are amendments proposed in the veto process, and it's all very spelled out legislatively, unless there's amendments, that budget is deemed passed.
Follow-up question, if I may.
Yes.
So if you present your budget tomorrow,
Yes.
can we, can
Council can make a
can
resolution.
council decide tomorrow that we all agree that we are not going to raise any amendments in the next 30 days? Can we give the mayor that certainty?
So I can't have it back so that the mayor can present the budget tomorrow.
However,
Whether it's tomorrow or another meeting, council can say that council wishes to, by resolution, council will say that you're going to shorten your 30-day window, the first window, down to 5 days or whatever, and that you're going to shorten your last window, the 15-day period, down to 2. And you absolutely can pass those resolutions tomorrow. And the mayor, if she's shortening her veto period, is just, she makes
got
a
a
declaration.
directive under my strong mayor
It is.
power, so
Yes, yeah. And so then,
I'll get my first directive on my registry.
yeah. So then when the mayor's budget is presented, it can move really fast from that point if those resolutions are already done, yes.
And we had actually discussed it because I think we all want to give staff the assurances of trying to get this passed before the holidays. It will take staff a couple of days to amend all the numbers all together. But there's absolutely no reason why there cannot be a special meeting called that would be available by Zoom participation for all. So Madam Craddock could send out the proposed mayor's budget as the agenda item, and you'd have a couple of days to review it. We all hop online for 10 minutes and present it. But we can shorten those veto periods right now. I'd like tomorrow if we want,
Yep.
or we could do it at that special meeting as well.
Sure.
So, like we've got Monday, Tuesday, I don't know that it would be Thursday, it could be next Monday, could be sometime between Christmas and New Year's, and it literally would be a 10-minute, well, we say that. Councilor Rivard.
I was looking through my book and I found one more question that I've written.
Okay,
So the question was through you and through the CEO, I guess it was would probably be for Ms. Henning. But how do we decide which roads get done this year and some other years? Because I'm looking, everything is now. Then for some reason, Levac Road, Highway 17 to Rich, says 6 to 10 years and it's getting done this year. I drove that. It's not that bad other than the intersection. I just don't understand, because then there's some roads in like Ward 1 that I saw we did design 2-3 years ago, but we're still not doing it. So I'm kind of a little confused as to how this works, right? Because it's now I get those, but 6 to 10 years, why are we spending $600,000 on a road?
So to answer your question, I think we discussed this before as well, that we base it, one, on the road needs study is our primary objective, but that looks at a snapshot in time of the road. And we also look at how often our crews are going out and maintaining potholes and things like that, how often we're getting service requests on these sections of road. So that road, you may have driven it and yeah, maybe it was great that day because they had been out patching and doing all those things. But ultimately, we're pouring a lot of maintenance into it and we're getting a lot of requests, and it's a high traffic road. And so we look at that as well, like what is the actual use of the road and all of those other things, which is why sometimes we'll take something that's 6 to 10 on the road needs study and say, you know what, this is actually costing us a lot of resources to maintain and a high traffic road, and let's get this dealt with now.
Yeah, so then I guess just to follow up, I would still, like, I know we had mentioned a few times about that list of roads. Because so now once I saw, when we're being told design 1 year, brushing and ditching 1 year, do the road the next year. There's at least 2 roads that I can think of then now they were designed maybe 3 years ago, so I've continuously told residents, hey, well, it'll be within a year. It's not even done. So I still do, like, I would still like to see. Comes to budget, it becomes confusing, a little disappointed, right, when you see the list. So that's just something on, like, I know we've requested that once or twice, and which is, I guess I can ask those people to submit service requests, because they just reach out to me, right? But roads in terrible shape, so there's a reason why it was designed or rushed and ditched. So I'm just a little disappointed on that front. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and I don't know what road specifically you're speaking to. It was.
Yeah, it was,
It could still be that the design is ongoing.
I'm just surprised it would take 2 years for a design.
Well, we bundle designs together sometimes, so it's not just designing one road at a time, and some of those roads are looking at drainage systems and things as a whole, so that's why it's taking
Yeah, the design was like
longer.
$42,000, so I was like, it can't be that extensive. But maybe
It's bundled with
yeah.
other roads, right? So.
And just on the 5 to 10 years, and I think Councillor Fedayam pointed it out. Again, it's, that's what the road looked like on August 23rd, 2021. And so for the case of Avenue du Lac, what's in the road needs assessment is very different than what is on the ground, which is going to happen depending on the circumstances and again, traffic counts and stuff like that. Councillor Fedayam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So if I understand correctly, then I understand the road needs study is a snapshot in time that was determined by the consultants who wrote the study. But the Public Works Department have their own view of what needs to be done from experience, from resident feedback, whatever. Could we not have some kind of visibility of that? Because all we have is the roads needs study. And if that the rating kind of is different in your books, then I would like to know that.
Ms. Crowd?
Yeah, sorry if I may. So I know that I had promised it to council in the fall, the 5-year plans, not just with roads, but with all of our fleet and all the rest. And you have heard me a couple times say when, looking at the fire fleet in 5 year, I actually have the 5-year plans done and they will come back with your asset management plan update as well. As we were getting ready for budget and Mr. Pilon had just joined us and I didn't want to confuse council with the current budget and the 5-year as well, but they are drafted, ready to go that we'll have to council with the 5-year and the asset management. Now, the 5 years are ones that will come back to council every year. It's part of actually the legislation with the asset management plan to review them and update them because stuff does deteriorate at different rates. And that's where that feedback from public and public works come in. But yes, you'll have that visibility on those, what is the next 5 years of projects very shortly. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Larrabee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we will have a book saying which road it's coming next year, the year after. But mind you, it's not written in concrete.
Yeah.
Road deteriorates faster when you get shifted around. Like I see here on this deferred projects. This is in the next 5 years forecast. But don't know where it fits in that 5 years. What we have deferred now this year.
This is probably been all the deferred projects.
That was just your deferred from your list that.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Like, look at my 5-year plan. I've been deferring projects for years.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to process. Is everybody comfortable with that? A special meeting? We will figure out a time and place for that, but we'll try to get it done either before Christmas or in that window in between. And it will be a Zoom meeting and it will not be long. But we'll give Ms. Craddock some time to amend budget documents and recirculate those for your review. And would you prefer to do the adjustments on the amendment and veto periods? Or amendment periods, veto is like a different process tomorrow or at a meeting when we look at the mayor's budget? I'm fine with doing it at the meeting with the mayor, like, so it's presented and then council can be comfortable that everything that they've asked for is in there and propose the changes to the amendment period at that time. You can shorten them, and I'm sure the clerk or Ms. Craddock will figure out what paper I need to fill out. How that needs to, I think that needs to be posted on our website. It will be official use, I guess, that my strong. So, and what I need to do on my end to shorten my comment. Any other questions, but? Councilor Bond?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How fast can we shorten? Mayor's budget?
How fast can you
How
shorten?
fast can we pass it?
Oh, so, I mean, council can shorten its amendment periods, you know, to
It's a day.
Yeah, absolutely, you know, and then the mayor, you know, has the, you know, what she's gonna shorten her veto period to, but yeah, so you can shorten it down. And
4 days.
Yeah,
2 days on your end, 2 days on my end.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilor Pellerin?
One last comment.
I just feel like I'm gonna laugh.
We're trying to do the budget early so we can get the bids out.
Mhm.
And I'd like to know which idiot thought of that process, extending everything.
Provincial government.
You know?
No,
Nobody's in there.
let us not.
No, there is an idiot somewhere. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Pellerin. Okay, really,
It's not about the budget.
okay.
I did warn you that I was gonna raise a point.
Oh, yes.
Can I propose that we move the power gen meeting tomorrow to 6:20, since it's only a very short meeting with 2 resolutions, which I don't think are going to be debated.
Pass them now.
What's that?
Pass them now.
I don't know if that is even a resolution, because a resolution has to be, but
it's
if
not your resolution, no.
there's no issue from staff perspective to do 6:20, you said?
6:20.
Is that enough time to open past 2 resolutions, close? and pick council?
6:28. That's of course we get fed. Still have some.
Okay, so if everybody's gonna see show of hands, if you're okay with that. You'll get an email from our clerk or deputy clerk tomorrow, just with an amended agenda with the amended time on it. And then with that, I will ask for. We'll do what we have to do.
It is moved by Councillor Gagne and seconded by Councillor Larrabee. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2025-101 being the bylaw of the municipality of West Nipissing to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on December the 15th, 2025 shall come into force and take effect on the day it is passed.
All in favor? It's carried.
It is moved by Councillor Larrabee and seconded by Councillor Gagne. Be it resolved that the special meeting of council held on December the 15th, 2025 adjourned.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll say it's me, Fox Center.
Question, so you get them.
Never seen.
That way you